Welcome back to Deep Thoughts, ladies and gentlemen. So, I think about things a lot, especially the topics we discuss. I continue going after the show's over, for sure, as many of you OG folks know. Tonight we're going to talk about aliens just a little bit more. I want to focus on tonight the notion that they're evil, that they mean us harm. Now, some of you more inquisitive travelers on things like Telegram and Rumble, you've seen this video. I mentioned it once. I think I did. About a gentleman who's sitting down in a chair reading from a piece of paper. And the video is called Real Man in Black, doing his little confession. He's sitting in front of, I think, a bed or something, or some room. And man, he makes it sound convincing. Makes it really sound convincing. But the stuff he claims is a little absurd. Let's review what he said. He said that he was inducted to the Men in Black in 1970, names all of his COs. I mean, literally names them out. But of course, if you name a guy who's dead, then whatever. Walt Disney hired me to do this, right? He said he had no family. He was a foster child, so he was a perfect candidate. They did a bunch of MK Ultra stuff on him to erase his memory. Then they erased his identity in the real world. I think it was like 6 months or something of like conditioning. He's finally allowed to start participating. He was immediately put on a bunch of UFO projects. He was eventually, fairly quickly, introduced to the fact that there was a pact signed between the United States, I think it was Truman or something. There was a pact signed with the aliens that was effective as of 1955, where we would allow them to abduct human beings and do experiments on them at underground bases, surgically altering them, no anesthesia, horrific conditions, screaming concrete walls, right? If you ever went and investigated anything or did anything bad, they would erase his memory every single time. All the agents had their memory erased, except, of course, he remembered everything. Guess that's possible. He never explains how he got it all back. He claims that he killed Bill Cooper. That's a pretty amazing claim. Why don't you explain some of the details of that whole thing? Right? Why don't you explain your story, and we'll read the police report, and hopefully the two at least jive a little bit as to sort of where they covered up and where you say you did things. He said he killed a famous UFO enthusiast, a.k.a. documentary maker, a female. That the way he was trying to kill all these people, like Bill Cooper was, I think, shot. He says he had a wand that you put on the chest of a person, and it basically tasers you to your heart, and you'll have a heart attack. That sounds completely believable. I don't think that's a huge fictional stretch on his behalf. But he said that he hit this woman with it, and the wand malfunctioned, and he had to strangle her to death, and that his memory of strangling her to death is what haunts him to this day. He then said he was brought into an underground base where I think I even said this wrong when I recalled this. I thought he was above ground, but he says he's below ground. And that his CO showed him a stealth bomber floating overhead, which I think his year he quoted was the 80s. And the problem is that stealth bomber did not exist. And he didn't say anything about the fact that it didn't exist. He didn't say like, well, I saw this thing way ahead of time. No, he just cross-pollinated 21st century to 20th century stuff, if I remember it right. It's like Stanley Kubrick. The Stanley Kubrick interview mentions Bart Sibrel getting punched in the face by Buzz Aldrin in the interview. Well, Stanley's interview was supposed to be conducted in 1999 before his death. So no documentaries had been released by Bart Sibrel. So that event never occurred, thus furthering the theory that that was a hoax. Damn good one. Still don't know who that actor was. So this guy continues talking, and he says that he thinks that these holograms are going to be used to create a fake alien invasion, and that they'll be projected in the air, and that inside the holograms will be our vehicles, and that they're going to be zapping us on the ground, and that that's how they're going to stealth them. Complete complete fucking bullshit. Let me just get it right out there. We got to keep this real, right? The only interesting thing he talked about, and we do not know what year this video was made, is that he says that there was going to be a influenza outbreak in 17 or 18, 17 or 18, and that was going to cause a huge problem for us. And he looks at the camera and goes, so if that happens, then this is all real. It could have been recorded 3 months ago, and again, filtered through some bad cameras. You could have filmed it with a VHS thing off eBay. But it's the underground dumps, because he said that at the current rate of the recording, that this was actually had accelerated up to 8 million kids are being pulled into these dumps a year and surgically modified. Okay, let's really just they never think about the logic of what the hell they're saying when they make up these stories. Because we have all these other stories. By the way, I dreamed of meeting Dr. Stephen Greer last night. He was at almost a fast food restaurant somewhere other than America, I think. It felt like Tokyo or even Europe. And I think we were Asian kids, though. And he was doing a meet and greet. And I saw him and I was like, oh my God, that's Dr. Stephen Greer. So I waited for him to kind of get done because he's super intense on his little laptop. Finally, he gets out. The kids have left. He's out front. And I walk up to him and I mentioned this mutual friend of ours. I had a conversation with him. And it was just funny. But anyway, take Dr. Stephen Greer. Take Bob Lazar. Take a lot of other, Project Disclosure interviews. Virtually every single non-close encounter movie interaction with aliens in terms of them meeting military personnel has all been due to accidental crashes. Or, in some cases, like Dr. Stephen Greer talks about, the radar solution to the problem. We hit these vehicles with radars. Bob Lazar said out of the 9 vehicles that he observed at S4, again, Bob talks about 2 degrees, has no proof that he ever lived in Massachusetts long enough to have 2 degrees. Where's your photographs of just living there? Where's your alumni T-shirts? You just don't go to those colleges, MIT, without bringing something home, all right? And you certainly don't do it all secretly, so none of your friends know, none of your family members know, because apparently all these degrees were achieved prior to being sucked into Area 51. Whatever. But he said 8 out of the 9 were injured, missile strikes and various damage on the vehicles. If his story with Joe Rogan, that they were archaeological digs, well, that might explain that they were injured some other time in history and we simply dug them up and found them. The idea that only America has ever found these things in an archaeological dig is impossible to believe. As big as Americans think that our continent is, it's just a tiny percentage of the land that this world contains. Africa, Europe, Eurasia, that's the mass, that's the majority of the world's surface, right? You mean to tell me no one has ever found these things? Russia would lie, America would lie, probably most of the European countries would lie, Britain would definitely lie with the Royal Academy of whatever that is. Lises is. But, the Philippines would find one, India would find one, Pakistan would find one of the stands would find one, and they just walk outside and go, well, there it is right there. It's the internet, it's live streaming, right? You get out. Now, America has every single one of them. So I started thinking about this treaty. Why would you sign an agreement, a treaty, with an alien species and agree to give them millions of citizens of the United States or even the world? Let's think about this. If you were going to create a medical institute below the ground, and you're these aliens who apparently have enough technology to get to Earth in ships, but you can't assess a human being by working on cadavers, which is what we do. If you can't splice the genome without actually killing the person themselves, I think your technology sucks. You're not as advanced as this dude in the chair seems to think you are. And let's do some logistics. If you have one patient on a table and you're going to be doing some procedure and you suck so bad at it, you got to do it millions and millions, 8 million a year. Well, how many is that in 2 years? That's 16 million. You know, keep multiplying that up. And of course, it's on supposedly a logarithmic curve, meaning it's going up and up and up as time goes on. Whatever. How many doctors / scientists or grays are going to be sitting around these beings? Reptilians, who cares? How many per patient are going to have to exist down in those little dumbs to work on those kids? One? It's got to be one. So let's do that math real quick. You have 8 million bodies you're going through. Now let's say you divide it by 12, and so you're starting to work on a little under 1 million every month. How many scientists do you have to grind, or do you have to bring here to grind through those bodies? I'm thinking there's got to be at least 2. Maybe 2. And then what are you doing? What are you doing with these things? You're just cutting them up to hear them scream, Nah, you'd be taking tissue samples. You'd be working with them. I used to work in pharma. Well, guess what? The only beings that they ever killed were dogs and down. And that's one that would freak people out. They think Fauci's bad. Oh, he's a Nazi, all right. But I worked in a building, and again, I was 23 years old. And they would back a truck up. I've mentioned this once before, and you'd hear all this barking and barking and barking downstairs because it was the test facility. While I was working there, some group raided the place on a weekend and he freed all the dogs. It was really cool. I was like, whoa. Next door, literally the building next door to this building has really invented the graphical user interface, the Allen dude from Xerox. It's where Steve Jobs went. It's where Steven Lisberger went to create the Macintosh and to write the movie Tron. Right next door. Didn't know. I mean, I knew when I was there, but I didn't know that was the whole history of the building. Back to pharma. They do not want to kill this one thing, and it's a chimpanzee. Place I worked at, I believe, had like 7 to 9 at any one point in time. But they're hard to get. They're hard to get, and they have to, put the drug in them at a really careful dosage not to kill them. Well, let's take aliens here. Aliens come to us, and we have to resolve the fact that why would a treaty be signed in the first place? To get to this point where they're going to be doing this crazy Kevorkian surgery, this Jeffrey Dahmer act on these people. Nonsensical procedures. Well, if we're shooting them out of the sky a lot, why the hell would we sign a treaty with them? I mean, you could talk about eugenics, you could talk about Luciferian kind of stuff. Nah, they're going to have something over our head in order to get that treaty signed. It doesn't even matter if they're like, we're here already, we're at the bottom of your oceans, we're in your mountains or whatever. It doesn't matter. We would go kick their ass. We go kill every single one of them. We'd starve them out. We'd do something. We get a Tesla coil going. His death coil. We'd unravel those ships. We'd do something. We've never been attacked by an alien that I know. There's been no assertions that they've ever attacked. Hey man, they want to send a message. They'd blow up a base. No, what are they known for? They're known for deactivating our nuclear arsenals. Is that it? Is it their peace is the threat to our savageness? It's an interesting equation. So the reason why we would give in to these folks makes no sense in the first place, in my opinion. Let me know if you can come up with a really decent, black and white, hardcore, knee-jerk solution to that problem. And then give me even the fabled history that might back up such an assertion. Well, at this place, they did this and this. Which the accident in Puget Sound just before Roswell crash. It seems like they can't even fly their own vehicles. The creature that was found at Roswell, supposedly this really gentle being, the one that survived. And what's really interesting is the guy that sat down and told this story on the chair, he recreates the Roswell crash exactly. But he mentions a different location and a different year when he was alive. Three aliens, gray aliens in a vehicle, one mulched up, one dead, and one who was completely fine. He says in his interview, that's exactly what multiple people said about the Roswell crash. Okay, let's get back to these procedures. So the deal is we're going to sign a treaty with aliens so they can cut the living shit out of human bodies. No anesthesia, no nothing. And apparently we're not involved in the process. All we do is stick them down there and they get moved around and whatever. I don't know if we're supposedly participating in the disposal of the bodies or whatever it is. He says there's a crematory down there because that has a lot of Auschwitz sort of iconology that makes you feel like, oh gosh, they're as bad as Nazis, right? And that just sounds romantic to his story. Well, now, at some point, there has to be a conversation before this treaty is signed where somebody is talking to these folks, which apparently is, it's not just like, hey, how you doing? Well, I'm doing great. How are you? What'd you do on the weekend? You know what? We just flew around a little bit. It was really cool. Had some conversation with whales. No, they have to say, well, we're trying to figure out something about your genome, something about your DNA, something about you. Now, this is 1955, so there would be a lot of technology that didn't exist in the medical realm. And apparently, according to this guy, in exchange for the treaty, that's when we got a bunch of stuff like fiber optics, microprocessors, and whatever, probably Velcro or something, right? We just had advancements in using this technology. If you are an electrical engineer, it's harder and harder to believe those stories because you see the evolution of the invention. Very logically. Very, very logically. The idea that we needed aliens to figure out that extruded glass could carry light. The coolest definition I've ever heard of why fiber optics were ever used in the UFOs, which I've only mentioned once before, is that it was a way to have components talk to each other inside a UFO without creating any type of electromagnetic field to disturb the electromagnetic field that is the precision mechanism to make this vehicle fly in the first place. That makes sense to me, 100%. And of course, the rumor was that the fiber optics that we found in the crashes actually had power in them. Very interesting. Like they were the power source of their own transmission. Hence, there's no problem traveling, bending corners and that kind of stuff. Okay, that's cool. But wouldn't, at some point, some military doctors, some absolute mega scientists be sitting at this negotiation table and go, oh, well, you want to know about us? We have thousands of years of documentation. In addition to what the public doctors might know, we know all the rest. We've got the tomes of history that the citizens of our world are not allowed to have. We understand how cancer is created, what radiation does to the body, what makes you sick, what makes you well. We know that these vaccines we have for things are just a business, as well as a transhumanism platform. Okay. You want to mess around in genetics? Fine. We got tons of companies coming on board. They're going to be doing this exact same thing. What does genetic research actually require? Because what is it? What is it? Well, you just need a little bit of biomatter to do analysis on the blood, on the protein patterns that tell the chromosomes what to do. That's all you got to do. And you mean to tell me they're flying here, wanting to engage in this research for the very first time in their existence? Well, we just don't know anything about this. We're going to just do all of our R&D on you guys. Are they a pharmaceutical company of their own doing a bunch of bio experiments on us because they're developing drugs for their own people? Well, that would mean that there's some sort of species similarity between the two of us. I guess that's possible. But what about the number of folks it would take to analyze 8 million people a year? We're talking about 8 million aliens underground. Okay, that's a lot of people, folks. That is a lot. Los Angeles County proper, I think, is probably approaching 15 million by this time. A few years ago, I looked at it, was only 10 million people. So you're talking about, it's like a large double-digit percentage of several countries in Europe. If you're killing the patient, then what's the difference between doing the research on cadavers, of which we have plenty of cadavers, There's not a lot of open caskets for babies, okay? If little kids are hurt, little kids die from sicknesses or whatever, and supposedly that's what this guy's focus was, taking a bunch of kids underground, because that makes you care. That's a maternal trigger to caring. But then there's the second part of the game, which is how many decades does a brilliant culture need to accomplish whatever goal they're trying to accomplish? It seems that even humanity, human beings, Homo sapiens sapiens, haven't taken that long to accomplish anything medically. Some people might say AIDS, and then you figure out that AIDS isn't HIV, but even if it was, you look up the patent office. The patent was filed in 94, awarded in 96 for a silver treatment to the blood of patients with declining T cells, and it cures them. You can't get the patent if you can't prove it in the laboratory. Okay, well, so there's cures to things you just don't know. Man has not taken this long to do stuff. If we had that many vehicles coming and going, because I think you would need at least 2 scientists, and then, you got the people that are cutting things apart, supposedly, and then you got to have a staff that's actually doing something with it. That's a lot of people, man. You're up to 10 million easy. I think you're up to 20 million because you double the amount of staff to do the cutting with his kind of Neanderthal story. And then you're going to need people at 16. You need probably 4 to do the scientific work. I don't know if he's trying to imply it's global. It doesn't get any better just because you spread it all over the world. We're the only one that signed the treaty, so it should all be underneath our grounds. But that is a tremendous space to be hosting all of this stuff. He says he was MK Ultra to get his memory knocked out, but he never once, like Bill Cooper, had the dignity to say in the mid-90s in the CNN interview on his sofa, he said, I think most of the stuff that I was told after I saw my alien experience of vehicles going in and out of the ocean with 2 or 3 other guys on the deck of a ship, he says, that was real. But he goes, everything after that, I think I might have been programmed with a bunch of fake crap. Okay. One guy who worked at I think some sort of Los Alamos labs, he said that he left his office once and he said there's a lizard dude being escorted by 2 men in black, and the lizard guy was a clean 6 to 8 inches taller, and they were very civil. He got the sense that it was genetically engineered, but he just took one little look, and you're not supposed to do that in the first place. It was instinctual. Very mild-mannered guy sitting at a picnic table outside, and he didn't have anything else to share. He just said, that's it. Just telling you what I saw. But the other interesting thing is we're told about this surge in technology due to aliens. Where's the rest of the surge? Where is the rest of the surge in technology? If we sign this treaty in order to get technology, and we're letting them just kill and maim our people, yes, the military could get a lot of extra technology, but man, look at all the agendas they're trying to push right now that they can't get pushed. If they kept all of this technology streaming to our military, then this fake alien invasion thing would have happened decades ago. Decades and decades ago. At least by the 80s. As signaled by Ronald Reagan's speech, right? So let's take a break from the underground thing, because I think we beat that up pretty good. And let's move over to his story of the alien invasion. It's just, again, guys of his age, I don't mean to be completely disparaging on another human being, but it seems to be very customary that when you hit your late 50s, early 60s, and you're a white male from America, you tend to get to this point where you need false valor stories. You're a Navy SEAL. You're a Delta Force guy. You did all these. You're a general, man. You were in World War II. You're a time traveler. They all come up with all these stories, right? The guy that talks to the aliens, or lets them channel through him, right? Talks like this in his chair, because of course he's going to not talk in his own voice. Absurd. I need to imitate the vocal box of the spirit that is going through me. Hilarious. But he had an idea. He had a little epiphany. And the epiphany was, I bet I know how they do it, man. They're going to put those those holograms up there, and they're going to put our ships up there, our B-1 and B-2 bombers up in there, and they're just going to start bombing us from way up there. Sounds good for about 10 seconds. So you think it through, and you're like, wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. It is possible, I guess, that we would believe that this alien invasion could happen with a bunch of small vehicles. But how many of you have watched, I've seen the B-2 bomber twice in my lifetime, flying over the Rose Bowl, and maybe twice over the Rose Bowl. It flew by Sid Mead's house, and we're out back, and it was being escorted by, I don't know, F-18s or something, 16s, I don't know. It's loud, people. It is super loud. Like, I thought it was like, it's not horrifically loud, but it was way louder than I thought, man. It was distinctly different than the air show I just saw in Huntington Beach. But it moves a particular way. It is not a docile kind of thing that just goes nimbly through the sky. It doesn't do that. It goes in pretty much a straight line. Now, F-35 Raptor, is that what it is? That thing can move, man. That thing's got an engine that is like deafening. When I was just watching the air show, the F-18s are doing their thing. And let's just say the super loud, let's just say that's 100%. F-18's 100%. Your 35s were about 160% that sound. Much louder. Very impressive, man. The maneuvers were incredible. But if you're going to sell an alien invasion, probably a couple things you're going to need. I think the number one thing, especially if you saw, Battle for Los Angeles, which I actually bought, is they're going to need to do maneuvers that we don't see. And that's where the Tic Tac comes in, and the gimbal. 2 Navy aircraft launched out of 51 that just do these amazing super fast things. Now, why they haven't flown those over a major city begs the question of the story. Right. They only hang out where we never see them. It's the most absurd. They only in military space. Why would they only fly over the ocean or over a military base? Why would that be? Well, one, they're military aircraft. That might be the simple answer, but the second answer, never heard from anybody. And it's real simple. Because if it crashes, they can go pick it up. If it crashes, you're never going to hear about that moment. It's never going to get on 60 Minutes if it just goes plop right in the water because it ran out of its power supply or something went wrong. That's why they don't fly it over Los Angeles, New York, San Francisco, Dallas, Texas, London, Paris, Madrid, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Shanghai. They don't fly it over foreign countries because guess what? That'd be a violation of airspace too. It'd be considered an act of war if it was traced to the Navy / Air Force / Space Force or whatever that other clandestine agency might be. That's why it's always in America. Always filmed by U.S. Air Force. Sure, those Top Gun pilots are legitimately going, what the hell? But I get the sense from the 2 Top Gun pilots that saw the Tic Tac and went around and did the interviews, the male was informed about either post-debriefed what he saw, or he was briefed to drag the woman into it. Because when you see the woman on the 60 Minutes episode, she looks disturbed. Like, we're going to really talk about this? That kind of thing. Either that or she's a great actress. I don't believe that she's an actress. I mean, she's obviously a Top Gun pilot. It's hard to be both, But once you get let in on the secret, somebody says they take that guy off to the side, some air show hangar, and they go, okay, dude, remember you saw that little Tic Tac thing? Yeah. It was a 2004, right? Or something like that. They show it to him. There it is right here. This is the model you saw. He's like, no shit. They say, yeah. We got some footage of you chasing him. It's all in color. It's awesome. And I said that black and white bullshit that comes out of these $20 million aircraft. Let me show you. And he's like, oh my God, I thought it might be us. I didn't want to say anything. Well, because here's what we need you to do. We're going to break this story. And when we do, we'll call you before we do it. And, you're going to travel around and your partner, We're not going to tell her. We don't think she's stable enough to kind of hold this down for whatever reason. She's a really good person. I don't think she's going to hold alive very well. We don't want to torture her. You're an older guy. Yeah, no problem, man. No problem. And I mean, you're gonna make a ton of money. You're already retired, right? And you just charge them out the nose. Don't go anything less than $100,000 to talk to them, because everybody wants your story. We'll set it up too. How many of you seen the movie Independence Day? The big spaceship that hung over the city, District 9, Neil Blomkamp. That's the kind of invasion that's going to get people's attention. A ship the size of a small city parked over your city. Something gigantic is what most likely these people would be bringing if they were going to do an invasion. Otherwise, it's just a little kind of a gnat strike on the surface of this giant ball. It's like you don't fly a bunch of raptors into a foreign country and just kind of take pot shots at the ground and then they suddenly surrender to you, you know? No, that mothership is real important. Because the mothership says to you, oh, we're just getting started. You know those ships flying around? Those little gnats flying around this big ship? Well, we got hundreds of thousands of them inside the bowels of this ship. In terms of a super weapon, you see what that little guy could do? Wait till we get out the big cheese. We're going to cut a Zindi path right down the center of your state. Millions of you are going to die. Now, could they simulate that? Could they simulate that narrative through some other means? Man, I think the answer is actually yes. You get those directed energy weapons out. You operate them at a capacity that is going to be very visual. So instead of the September event where they used those weapons to quietly demolish those buildings, as proven by Judy Wood, I'm telling you, man, just look at the photographs, satellite photographs that they have. You'll see the little circular cuts from space, man. It is undeniable, okay? But they must have done that fairly invisibly, and it should be. It should literally be fairly invisible. But what if you turn it up like some of the photos we saw out of Paradise, California, where you got these beams from space, man, or planes or jets flying by? I think it's going to have to be bigger than just a Paradise squirt out of a gun that's hooked to the front of a jet. I think it's going to have to be some sort of, I don't know, maybe 1/20th of a mile diameter beam coming out of space, just blasting it down. Do I think that's going to happen? Nah, I don't. Not until the whole world falls, but I think they can make the world fall without any of that stuff. Look how stupid we are right now. I mean, we're getting smarter. We're getting smarter slowly because we're starting to see the carnage of pure insanity, right? I've talked a lot in different episodes about this whole alien contact thing. We've broken it down several times with different aspect ratios, just thinking about aspects, and we have just analyzed the sort of mental path that would have to enter the brain of an alien to want to have contact with us, but only have it with our military. To only engage us in these horrific experiments. I haven't heard anything this evil attached to the Greys in my lifetime other than this Men in Black guy. There's a whole thread on YouTube, which is a guy and a bunch of people that hypnotize people for a living. Some of you'll know his name. I can't remember it right off the bat. I talked about it like 3 or 4 years ago. But he would hypnotize people and find out that they had been abducted. And he claims that, he understands the risk of leading the witness and that kind of thing. And then he doesn't do that. And then he audio records them. And then he's played some of them publicly. But he got to a point. I think he's in New York. He does travel around the United States. I can't remember if he travels globally. But he got to the point in his story that he was basically asserting that thousands of human beings in every major city, especially New York, were just getting teleported right out of their living rooms inside giant skyscrapers, right? So it didn't matter how many girders or glass beams or whatever were in between this device. This device was just exactly like the transporter in Star Trek, without maybe the little crystallized version of you going away. Now, here's the thing. And I'll mention a Dan Aykroyd statement in a second here, which is very powerful. Thousands and thousands of people. This accumulates over time. Now, if these aliens wanted to abduct human beings, they have an agenda. For some reason, they physically need our bodies in their presence because there's no other way to do what they do. And they need a bunch of us. They need a bunch of new ones. This guy went on to claim that they're living in people's apartments, holding them hostage, making them go out to get things and bring them back to them, like some weird, again, like a Star Trek episode where Data went back in time, was trying to build a communicator through devices you might find at the turn of the 19th to 20th century. I think it was Jack London was his bellboy, right? Dan Aykroyd, who's got a much more interesting past than I ever knew. His parents were very, very into the supernatural, ghosts. And so they raised him with an open mind, which I think is just fabulous, man. That's one guy I'd like to sit down and talk to when no cameras are rolling, so he can just tell me what he really thinks about things. He's one gentleman that said he thought he kind of saw a man in black just vanish right when his show got canceled. His supernatural show got canceled. He was on the cell phone outside, and suddenly he looks across the street, and there's a dude in a car standing outside looking at him and looking angry. But he's a celebrity, so he just, whatever. I'm just going to keep on the phone, kind of keep my peripheral vision. He said no sooner did he walk and turn around, the guy is gone and the car's gone. Like it just magically vanished. But that's not the story about what he said. He said he was at this convention with a bunch of people that said they had been abducted, that they had gotten together, and I think he said something around 350 people or somehow in this room. And he had talked, and I guess before he left, he turned and said to the audience, he asked him a question. I think he said this on Joe Rogan's show. But he said, I asked everyone in the room, I said, of all of you who have been abducted, how many of you would wish it to happen again to you? Which I think is a brilliant question. He said virtually no one raised their hand. There's a few. But he said he thought that was utterly profound. I think I got that right. It was very few people that actually said they wanted to. But at most it would have been half. But it was amazing that if you are making up this story, like Whitley Strieber, if that guy wasn't bullshitting through his communion book, he sounds like the guy from the movie E.T. If you haven't seen E.T., tough shit. Elliot meets A.T., right? And they're chilling out. They're having all kinds of fun. And then suddenly the feds find out that this alien's there, and they bum rush the house, and for some reason, E.T. dies. And he gets put on ice, and he turns into like a cat turd, right? And the CIA dude comes in as Elliot's kind of looking at him in this like kind of casket thing. And they look at each other, and the whole backstory is that this CIA guy had seen E.T. as a kid. He was Elliot in a previous life, and he is just wanting to see E.T. again. And he's sad that E.T.'s hurt. And apparently this is a copy of, I believe, Steven Spielberg's childhood. He said not that he met an alien. I forgot what it was. He had some weird alien experience when he was a kid, and he just always wanted to have that again. I think it's him. I don't think it's an advisor to the movie or whatever, but it's based on someone's claim. For Dan Aykroyd, it adds credibility to these people that say they were abducted. But here's the thing. According to this New York hypnotist guy, so many people are being abducted. There's more people have been abducted than caught this coof. We'd all know somebody who had been abducted. I mean, it wouldn't be a problem finding them. And the thing is why wouldn't they crank up their algorithm? According to this Men in Black guy, they did crank up their algorithm, except everyone's being taken underground. How can all of these stories be going at the same exact time? You ever think about that? What if you were to have like a big, war room of all these stories? And I mean, we're pulling them out of books. We're pulling them out of newspapers, radio interviews. I mean, as soon as radio's recorded on a little tape or something, we're pulling together every single reported story and we put it in a gigantic timeline. Well, a long time ago, it's happening in one or two different places here and there, and it starts going simultaneous in the 40s. But Jesus, by the 80s, we have been invaded. It already has occurred. And if that is the case, why would Ronald Reagan, not that presidents are briefed on jack shit, but why would Ronald Reagan get up there and give the speech, and why would that be a repeated concept throughout history by certain politicians? That if we got alien invaded, then we'd have the New World Order in 2 seconds. Well, according to these people, they're already here. All you'd have to do, especially when I scare the living shit out of people, is leak the information about 8 million people being dragged down. And as far as the treaty in 55, you just say, well, it wasn't really a treaty. We were forced to do it. But what is the or else? There's always an or else when you're signing a treaty that sucks, right? Japan signing the peace treaty with America at the end of World War II. What was the or else? We'll continue dropping these atomic bombs all over you. That's what the or else was. Very compelling, okay? What's interesting is I thought about the Pixel Power episode, and I told you that certain events would not occur if there weren't pixels to move the story. And think about it. When they bombed Hiroshima, you remember they didn't shut down the war. Why? They didn't have pixel power. Yes, it was filmed from it was Enola Gay? Is that what it's called? Anyway, they filmed it, and we got that footage back at the DOD. We didn't circulate that around for quite a while. It was a heinous act that killed 80,000 people. It's not exactly something you pass around like, oh, we did. It was awesome, right? Later, when we spun the war and it was all wonderful, oh man, that footage was everywhere. But if they had been broadcasting live news on the internet when Hiroshima gets hit, well, that war would have been over in 2 seconds if we were truly the only ones on the planet that had ever mastered that technology and dropped it. So what is the or else in 55? Will fuck you up? I mean, what's the deal? It's got to be something really gigantic if that thing were to be the case. And then if you have that upper hand, why do you extend an olive branch at all? And then the thing is like if you start off giving them a few dozen people and then it turns into 100 people, then 1,000 people, then 10,000, then 100,000, then 1 million, then 8 million. Well, how long do you keep that little deal going before you start going, hey guys, like here on 3, we're going to fuck all these people up. They're all downstairs. All humans down there are already screwed over. We're going to wire every single underground dumb to just blow up. We're going to lock them in and burn them out. Whatever. We'd come up with something, especially in America. I mean, think about it. Think about this for just 1 second. Consider this as a full-blown reality statement, not a story. Let's say this story was true, this guy was telling us. But we don't know. But it's leaked out. It's even announced on TV. Maybe underground, militias working with the military. They all get together, every division of the military, all the National Guard, everybody. And they say, okay, these motherfuckers are down there killing our people. We got a plan. Are you in or you out? You might die. But there's 8 million people being held down there, most of them kids being tortured to death. Are you in or you out? Oh boy. Oh boy. You'd have a lot of Proud Boys down there screwing places up. It'd be like all the LA gangs go down from that level. I mean, it would just be a slaughterhouse, right? Probably a decent idea for a B movie, Mr. Carpenter. No, I don't think this makes any sense no matter how you cut it. It's more disinformation in this channel of UFO conversations. It is to brand the aliens dark potentially for this backup plan, which might be this fake alien invasion. But again, you can't have, in my opinion, there's an archetype to all stories, right? There's a pattern of story. With the alien invasion, its overall arcing purpose is to make the audience feel extremely vulnerable. The audience in this particular case would be the citizens of the world, not just America. So you can't float a story that they're in the ground underneath you and suddenly attacking you from space. I mean, you could, but this is supposed to be, we're on this blue marble. It's a round ball in space. That's the story. And they're coming in from outer space. And they're just taking pot shots at us. I mean, we have made so many movies about this moment. What's really kind of interesting about it is, yeah, you get your person who's had their head in the sand their whole life and they just probably have a heart attack walking out the front door. That'll happen. It's a sad thing. But you get a lot of kids that are into sci-fi of all walks of life, bangers down to like your biggest nerd, your big, SpaceX geek. They walk out the door and see this, and I'm telling you, they would have euphoric, chemicals. They'd have adrenaline and dopamine just pounding through their veins that this is the most amazing moment. And even if they were to die in a laser attack, as their body is cooking away and they're feeling pain, part of their mind's going to go, isn't this cool? Isn't this a cool way to die? But it also occurred to me this other thing. Think about how war has gone since the 90s when Desert Storm happened. Because it was one of the very first times in modern history. We did this in World War II, a big time. In fact, World War II is a great example as well. But let's just do World War II. That's actually much better. We fly over, the Brits and Americans together, we fly over German-occupied territory and drop metric tons of bombs that are just destroying factories and cities and churches and just unbelievable devastation across Europe. Did the Nazis give up? No, not even close. That's why the war went on for, it's really from 39 to 45. The bombings, I can't remember when the bombings technically started. You can't just do a little tiny strike and run away. That's not how wars are fought and won. So, if they were going to go with an alien invasion story, there would have to be super weapons hitting every major country on planet Earth to get that population to potentially kneel down. And this idea that it's going to be fake. Well, what is that, what is the difference between what they can do in a fake alien invasion and what they can do in a real alien invasion? Okay. Well, we've seen War of the World movies since the 60s. But there's a ton of like alien Battle for Los Angeles. Independence Day. Okay. It's not just they're up there and they're zapping at the ground, right? And you can't just keep a gigantic hologram the size of a city in the sky. It takes too much power to create such a thing. Just spreading the field of whatever device you're using to make a gigantic ship in space is impossible. In fact, I think that if you were to take some sort of array of these holographic projectors, the way that you're going to see them enter the atmosphere and leave the atmosphere is that they're going to have a very short distance in your line of sight that they can exist. It could be a cloudy day. That's the way they do it too. But they literally animate these things like they're coming out of the clouds. But what's actually happening is the vehicle is being rezzed up to opacity. Does its little flyby, does its little thing, and as it needs to exit because it's leaving its range of projection, believe me, clouds are going to cause an absolute problem with projecting light because it's going to bounce off the clouds, right? But anyway, if it comes out of the blue sky, it'll come out. It'll look like it's really way up in the air. It's going to come out of the blue, start getting opaque, and then it's going to do its little strike, and it's going to immediately turn around and go back up into the blue, and they'll just fade it away. Thus, the blue goes through the vehicle, and that'll give you the illusion that you're looking at the atmospheric density of the sky. But again, them coming in and striking and then suddenly disappearing, that's going to really, really not work. It won't work. Let's say they maintain this thing. And again, you're going to have to maintain it. One, you're going to have to convince the world that this stuff was actually taking place. You're going to need them flying over Tulsa, Oklahoma, over my little town in Kansas, every little tiny village and province around the world. Everyone's going to need to see it. Because if one person didn't see it, even if they saw it on television, even if they're shown video, even if they go to, you're living in the Ozarks and you go visit the city and it is blown up, it is destroyed from space. Yeah, you get a little bit of a, oh my God, man, this is real. But if you see one, even one for a split second, how many human beings on Earth want to say right now that they saw a UFO, met an alien? Millions. They've got to deliver that package. They got to deliver that into every single person's brain. It's going to take days, weeks, months. If you really want to pound out the notion that the world is going to surrender to these folks, especially unify into a one world government, it's going to take a lot of pressure for a lot of years. I mean, if you were to do the math on World War II, Hitler was going to win the whole planet. He's going to take every single square foot of this place. His army was unbelievable, supernatural. The amount of engineering they were able to accomplish in a short period of time. If anything, it's like his army were a bunch of freaking aliens, like that Russian movie about the Nazis who escaped to the moon, right? We are so desperate to hear something interesting in this world that we're willing to believe anything, man. And Telegram is right there to feed your brain. Now, as long as you see it, as I always say, as long as you see this stuff as entertainment, complete concentrated bullshit, you're good, man. You're good. Enjoy the show, man. Enjoy the show, as that fraud online said all the time. Because that's all it is. And no matter what these stories are, even if every single thing you've ever heard came true, besides the second coming, you got to pay rent. You got to buy your food. You got to learn to live, you know. You have to raise your kids, hug your spouse, bury your elders. You're still going to want to listen to your music. You're still going to want to do whatever you do. Not going to stop. It might get disrupted a little bit, but those strategic things that you have to do on a daily basis to stay alive are going to have to continue. Now, the dramatic overlay on this concept that we don't really talk about, and I don't think anyone really has, because no one can claim they actually know this, but since we're talking about someone intentionally doing this fictional thing, as Dr. Stephen Greer has been focusing on this last year, the one thing I could see that would catalyze this would be they have to, at the command structure of this covert program, come up with a sort of an alien-esque plan such that when they destroy certain areas of the world, it looks logical. It isn't Edge of Tomorrow with, you know, these nonsensical creatures just running across the surface of the earth, killing everything that's human. If you were to take out the Earth, it'd be a battle. It would be like they would have their little military general Greys, and they'd be like, okay, what we do is knock out the power supplies, we knock out the food sources, this. And once we got them pinched down to the point where they're about to die, a bunch of them have already died. We need to literally kill 50% of them in like 2 days. Because we want those other 50% to be controllable, and they need to do what we say. That means that whatever happens starts becoming ridiculously strategic. Power goes out immediately. Boom. Planes drop out of the sky because there can't be any. Why can't there be planes in the sky? Well, they're a form of military vehicle. They don't have to sort it out. They don't care. Passenger planes just drop out of the sky. All of them. Any vehicle tries to take off, done. Any missile tries to launch, well, you just saw the tip off and it falls into the ocean. Any missiles that try to get launched out of missile silos, well, they just disable those things. Lickety split. Nothing you can do. They move a lot faster than you. But the other thing is, they got a problem on their hands. If they knock out power first to go with this strategy, which would be probably how the OG aliens would do it, how they would really do it. What's that do? Well, that cuts off the pixel power, doesn't it? Got to tell the story. Got to create the narrative. If you can't get a transmission, then you can't get the narrative and you can't keep the whole world believing your story. So what would be the logic in having an alien invasion, but your cell phone still works? Television still works. The internet still works. Oh, yeah, there's some people in your neighborhood who got those emergency radios and stuff, but how could you keep a radio station broadcasting? I mean, yeah, I guess you got some diesel generators you could go to, some emergency backup systems that the government might use. But the second your cell phone loses its power, what are you going to do now? You can't get the message. Television, internet, well, it's all down. So if we got an alien invaded, but you can get all the messages about the invasion and what they're doing, and you can turn the TV on just like in September 2001 and actually see the damage, especially happening live, it's probably fake. Thing is, if what Bill Cooper saw in the ocean was truly what he said he saw, no reason not to believe the guy. He's one of the only self-deprecating ufologists ever to exist. I mean, that actually kind of minimized what his additional claims were. Well, that would mean that this Abyss movie that James Cameron made was actually a documentary in a way, based on a true story. That at the bottom of the ocean, why not? There's bases down there, using these vehicles. Some people might think there are vehicles, and I'm sure we probably have vehicles that can maybe do that nowadays. I think he said he saw us in like 67 or something. Well, that seems pretty advanced for 67, even if you were to give them all of the advancements that we think they might have had over us. I'm going to digress for a second, but I'm going to illustrate a point. I saw two videos yesterday, which I think were extremely telling. This 107 guy who films his boots. It's Juan, Mexican name, letter O, Savon, S-A-V-O-N. He's being interviewed by this gentleman who interviews him all the time. He looks like sort of the Latin brother of Joe Rogan. But that dude said, well, because they're asking him, who's in charge? And this guy is like 17's real and all this other stuff. Okay, whatever. So he said, well, if Biden's in charge, then why don't they shut down Gitmo? Because Pelosi's wanted it shut down and Shifty Schiff wants it shut down. But it's actually had a new hospital attached to it. It's had $150 million worth of expansion to it. New courthouses. And apparently, according to Juan, the hospital actually has a geritol speciality because the people who will be put there are going to be much older. Makes sense based on the list of people we know should go in there. Okay. Then I watched the latest SGT report, and that dude's completely out of that movement. He is completely done with it. It's just he's calm and relaxed. He interviewed this journalist who's never been in it. It's pretty interesting. But let's think about that Gitmo thing. There is supposedly this big deep state with all this super duper technology, right? 50, 100 years ahead of us. They got flying saucers, UFOs. They got a base on the backside of the moon. The man there, they got the power to take ET home. Remember that old statement? All right. But they can't get rid of Gitmo? Really? Can't get rid of it? You can't just blow it up from space, melt it to the ground, blame it on whoever the hell you want to blame it on. Blame it on North Korea, man. Blame it on whatever. Blame it on China, whatever you got to do. Some of these people would rather start a land war with China than to go to Gitmo. Okay. So when you see these inexhaustibly powerful people unable to accomplish the most basic things that would benefit them tremendously. You got to start to think at this, look at all this information, all this fucking disinformation that we get. And it's like, I think one of the biggest pieces of disinformation is that the military is way ahead of where they are today. Like ridiculously ahead. Okay. You could have anti-gravity so you could do the TikTok thingy, but you just don't have all the other stuff. I mean, because we make movies with sci-fi CG stuff all over the place, we think that somewhere the Transformers actually live and breathe and exist somewhere. I think the funny thing about the whole alien invasion thing is, where would you store a vehicle that was big enough to simulate that District 9, Independence Day thing hanging over your city? Where do you put it? Tunisia? Like, where do you put it? South America? How do you build it with nobody knowing? Do you build a big pit in the ground like The Thing, and you just build it until you need to get it out of there? It's like a Tommy Knockers finale where it just drives away. It's like, we need to simmer down now about this constantly believing stories that make you feel impossibly inferior to your potential attacker. If you're a person that's been studying this story of this fake and alien invasion, you might feel weak to it because they have all this, clandestine stuff. Okay, it takes power to generate anti-gravity electromagnetic waves around a vehicle. And like they told my buddy Sid, they're way past spinning Mercury in a Taurus. They got other things they can do it with. Okay, that's great. There's nuclear-powered concepts creating a tremendous amount of power. Remember, power can be exponentially combined. Just a coil by itself, a Tesla coil by itself, continues to double, triple, quadruple the power that's traveling through it. It capacitates. Uses resonance, Okay. As I always tell you, just to kind of frame this a little bit in your head before I sign off. When I did my AI episode way back in season 1, it's in the first 20 episodes, man. Well, Elon Musk was doing those statements where he says, I've seen AI that's so terrifying. It's like, okay, motherfucker, what did you see? Don't just do a fucking interview and threaten the entire world through some passive-aggressive technique that you saw AI that's terrifying. All the AI you need to really fuck up the world? Get those Boston Dynamics, dogs and cows out there with fucking guns on them. Go watch that episode of Black Mirror. It's one of the last episodes ever made, with little dogs running around shooting us in the head. They shoot you with darts that have GPS in them, and then they all work together to hunt your ass down and shoot you. They all got little 22 caliber 45s, whatever, 308s. They don't carry a lot of ammo, but they don't need a lot of ammo because they're not going to miss. Look at the drone bots that were in that one movie. It's just so realistic. The drones that have little 22 rounds on their bottoms, they only carry one little stinger, just like a bee. Yeah, they just release them into a crowd, and it's just like that movie Runaway with Gene Simmons and what's his name, Tom Selleck. There was a bullet that would chase you in a crowd because it knew your DNA and it hit you. And it's been copied several times, but that's the OG movie where it existed. Great movie. Gene Simmons, who's turned into a complete turd at this point. He did great. He did an amazing villainous role. I couldn't believe it was the last time he acted, right? He did Kiss Meets the Phantom in that movie, and that was it, Maybe he's done some stuff I haven't seen since, but he should have been a star on the silver screen, man. But yeah, you don't need a tremendous amount of AI. You don't need any more AI than they already have right now to kill every single human being on the face of this planet. You want to go hide in some rubble somewhere? Oh my God. The humanoid Boston Dynamics robot, you wonder why they're making them capable of jumping over rubble? Because they're going to be in rubble. That's why, because they're going to blow the living shit out of this planet if we don't stop them. And they'll just crawl over the rubble and just go ping, pong, ping, ping, ping. It'll be just like Chappie, man. That stuff's done. That AI is done. You got a robot that goes down the street, does infrared examination of homes. If you're hiding in your attic, it's going to see you, man, unless you got a cloak. It's going to cloak your heat signature. Good luck on that one. You might just shoot over cool things just to make sure. Doesn't get you. Just brings in the .20 caliber gun and blows a hole through your house, man. I mean, like the other thing too we could talk about for a split second would be what weapons would an alien use? Would they really take the time to search and hunt with some aim device and shoot everybody with something? A laser? Some projectile? Super doubt it. You just use a binary weapon system, right? You release the A all over the world. Why do you think we have chemtrail planes out there? We've all been ingesting the A. In our case, it's probably precious metals pounded down to nano size. We get all that nice metal in our system. And the B is just the frequency of electricity. An EMP that destroys humans but leaves all the buildings standing, right? Easy peasy. So in terms of wiping the planet out, that's not an issue. They've never been closer, as I say, than right now. But these alien stories, which is what this episode's about, it's there to get you unfocused. It's there to build up the sort of foundational fears that will pop like a pimple if they happen to put something in the sky. Tiny little thing will make your brain plus that is like an exponential modifier, right? It's what you're seeing to the power of what you have believed up to that point. So don't believe it. Use a little bit of logic. If you have the power to comment on things that are out there, comment, have some balls. Just go, hey man, this is all bullshit. You can say, hey, look, I believe in aliens, I believe in UFOs, but this whole narrative, nah. All it takes is a guy sitting in a chair reading his memoir fiction. All of a sudden, everyone's freaking out. It's good to listen to what they're doing because it gives you the disinformation channel that they're spewing. And it gives you some time to think things through. If I happen to sit at the lounge, and it'll most likely happen in the next year, and someone mentions that video, do you see that guy with the Men in Black thing? I'll pull out this episode in my head, just go, well, what about this, and then usually the guys crumble. Nah, yeah, you're right, that's all bullshit. Or you get the guy that really wants to continue to believe the narrative, and so they'll just get angry at you. Very rare. Anyway, let me know what you think. Let me know if you saw that video. It's out there on Rumble. And if you haven't been to deepthoughtsradio.com, please go. That's where everything is. Audio, video, all social media, remastered season 1, a store. And for those of you who contribute through PayPal and Patreon, thank you so much. You make it happen. Take care of yourself and someone else, and I'll see you on the next Deep Thoughts. Over now.